Okay, how is my new background? It's a bit windy outside, but okay, I have set my heart on this, so let's try it. So I get this asked a lot because I'm an herbalist and also a midwife. So what about herbs in pregnancy? Are they safe? And unfortunately, the short answer is today, in this world that we live in, with all this over exaggerated fear and the internet, we can't recommend any herbs safely to anybody. But let's look at it a bit closer and let's do this properly. So let's dig into the weeds. Okay, herbs in pregnancy. Yeah, it's a long story. It's in the end you will have to take your own decisions. That's what's going to be the gist of it. But let's look at this. So there are herbs that are considered to be safe. Those are lists you can kind of stick to if they're written by somebody who has an idea, who has an understanding of that. And there are herbs that are definitely not considered safe for some reasons. And then 99% of all herbs fall somewhere in the middle where they are not proven to be safe. So you will find on any supplement bottles, any herbal tea package that you pick up, you will find a warning: do not take in pregnancy or if breastfeeding, because there's not sufficient data, or I mean the data piece sometimes is not printed on the bottle, but that is actually what it means. So we don't have long-term studies who would prove that those herbs are or supplements are absolutely safe to take in pregnancy. But that doesn't mean they're unsafe. Yeah, so those 99.9% of herbs that are kind of not defined, we don't have studies on it. We have to make our own decisions or stay away from them. But sometimes that's really hard because, we also lose our tools. I mean, what choices do have women in pregnancy if they have to manage a condition like allergies? They can't take any pharmaceuticals. They have digestive issues, things that can also be a hazard to the pregnancy, and then we don't have our choices. We don't have the herbs, we don't have the tools that we would normally use to treat those conditions effectively. And of course the pharmaceuticals, yeah, it's even a greater risk in most cases. So let's not just throw it all out and say, okay, stay away from it. This would be easy and would be the short answer, but I'm here to give you a more in-depth analysis of what I think about this issue. So it's of course very hard to say to women, take this and that herb to manage this and that condition in pregnancy. Maybe don't take it in the first 3 months because, let's just be totally safe and not try anything new in the first 3 months, because the risk of a miscarriage is of course higher, like in about the first 12 weeks more or less. We have a naturally higher risk of miscarriage that has nothing to do with which herbs the woman takes normally, but of course we want to be totally safe, and we never know how a woman does react. Oh, the wind is picking up. So we don't know in the end, yeah? So we could have this philosophy, we could just say, okay, in the first 3 months we have to be a bit stricter. There's not only the risk of miscarriage, but also, the organs of the fetus are being formed. This is the phase where we had very negative experiences in the past with certain pharmaceuticals that we didn't know would cause a damage. We call this the teratogenic action, yeah, that it actually interferes with the development of the organs of the fetus, and this could cause a kind of a handicap, or let's say a malformation or something of the fetus. So we know that in theory pharmaceuticals and also some herbs could maybe have this action, and of course this is a category of things to definitely stay away from, even the whole pregnancy actually. But if we know that from an herb, but the first 3 months are of course the phase where the organs develop, and after that, yeah, it's not such a big risk in terms of miscarriage or some malformations of the fetus. Okay, so this could be a strategy, to see the first 3 months in a different light than the rest of the pregnancy. What is the kind of adverse reaction that we expect from this herb? Might it cause miscarriage? Might it cause a malformation of the fetus? Or will it bring on early labor, which we don't want, or any other side effect? But those would be the main categories. Yeah. So we can look at herbs and look at them from a standpoint of what do they do to the uterus? What action do they have on the uterus? For example, do they relax? Do they bring blood? Do they enhance circulation? Are they known to be an emmenagogue? An emmenagogue is an herb which brings the menstruation on. So this is also not the same as being an outright abortifacient, which would be herbs who also can cause can cause an abortion, or you could do an abortion with this category of herbs. But emmenagogues are also sometimes not clearly defined in the literature. So emmenagogues, sometimes any herb that has any effect on the female organs is called an emmenagogue, on the female reproductive system. No? So this could be warming the uterus, relaxing the uterus, increasing the circulation, or having an hormonal action, which would be a different action. And all those different actions are kind of lumped together in this term emmenagogue. So this doesn't tell us much. So we cannot, if not, it would be easy, you know, we simply just avoid all herbs that have been labeled in the past as an emmenagogue. But writers do not agree what an emmenagogue exactly is and what it does. And also we have strong emmenagogues, the ones we rely on if we really have a period that is late, or a cycle that is very long and we want to really bring the period on. We would turn to those emmenagogues, but surely more like, you know, the ones who really do the job, and not the ones who, you know, you would have need to take in a very high dose and let's see if it works at all. So they are milder emmenagogues and really the potent ones. So the stronger ones, of course, we want to also definitely avoid. But here we go into the gray zone, you know. Maybe even an innocent little flower like calendula has been termed an emmenagogue somewhere in some herbal literature in the past, because it's a lymphatic herb. It kind of can get things moving, so it could kind of gently bring menstruation on, which of course is also not the same as causing a miscarriage in early pregnancy. It is likely, in my opinion, that this wouldn't happen, or, you know, it always depends on the dose, of course. So what do we do with this in-between information about herbs that seem very mild, like calendula? I have seen herbs like hibiscus or tulsi in the list of do avoid in pregnancy, and I find this, and usually you have comments of women below the blog post like freaking out because yesterday they drank a cup of hibiscus tea and now they think, I have to go to hospital, will something terrible happen to the baby? And they're maybe in fear until the day of the birth because they drank a cup of hibiscus tea. Yeah, so you find those comments, and I get very sad and angry about this situation, because I think the way the information is presented, yeah, it's just not differentiating in this way as I'm trying to explain now in this video. Yeah, so some herbs are mildly warming or circulative herbs. They have been named an emmenagogue somewhere in the literature. It doesn't mean that this is like a great risk to pregnancy if you drink a tea of tulsi tea, or a cup of tulsi tea, or hibiscus calendula or something like that. Yeah, so about which you will find on the internet some warnings about. So yeah, please don't freak out, you know, drinking 1 cup of something, it depends, but of those milder herbs that for me are in this 99% category of herbs that we just don't know, that we just don't have any long-term studies about, just understand that saying this herb has no research that it's totally safe in pregnancy and breastfeeding does not mean that it's dangerous, okay? And also, if an herb has been named in some literature an emmenagogue, it doesn't mean that it will bring a miscarriage on in pregnancy. Probably that will not have any effect after the first 12 weeks, honestly. Yeah, this is very unlikely. A pregnant uterus reacts very different than a non-pregnant uterus to those emmenagogues, yeah. And also, of course, the quantity, yeah. So, of course, we have to do a bit more research, you know. Maybe you will think about, are you giving like higher doses, therapeutic doses of calendula or of whatever during many weeks to a woman? Or are you going to research more and, of course, get to the gist of it? Why is this herb mentioned on some lists to not be safe? About other herbs, it's totally clear, you know. It's totally clear we should stay away from pennyroyal or other really like stronger abortive herbs. So about some of the herbs, we don't have this doubt. We know, yeah, those definitely we should stay away from. But of course, this is a short list, you know. This is an easy to memorize list. I like the list of Aviva Rom in her book, or maybe even on her website. She has a list of herbs to strictly avoid, and she also has kind of a positive list, herbs that she mentions that are usually taken in pregnancy and that are deemed to be safe. Yeah, because we also we do not always need a complete study that follows the whole pregnancy of somebody taking this herb and the after effects and all this research, you know, that would cost way too much money. What we have is also, of course, experiential knowledge of those herbs that have been traditionally taken. About the red raspberry leaf, for example, we know that women have taken it for such a long time, hundreds of years, maybe even thousands of years. It has been safely taken in pregnancy. We would have noticed if it causes any problems with miscarriage. But even in the case of red raspberry leaf, especially because it's such a popular herb that is widely taken by women, there have been done studies in the lab, and sometimes these are just animal models, not actual studies on the pregnant women, but an animal model where they cut up into strips the uterus of a rodent, of a mouse or rat, and then put this in a petri dish and then inject an extract like 6,000 times more potentized than the actual red raspberry leaf tea into the cut up strips of uterus, and then they see, oh, it contracts. But this doesn't mean that it causes contractions in the actual woman, or they would cause a miscarriage, or it actually doesn't tell us that much, honestly. It's not that transferable to the actual situation of pregnancy with real women and real bodies. So those animal model studies, they often have especially if they're done with extracts and other forms of the herbs that we would not normally use. They isolate some constituents. It's not like the normal tea at a normal strength that we would use in pregnancy. But even then, even in this case, I know midwives or herbalists who now say, let's not use the red raspberry leaf tea in the first 3 months. I mean, I agree that it's actually more important. It's an herb to prepare the uterus more down the road in pregnancy. So you could start drinking this in the 3rd trimester, or 2nd and 3rd. You are for sure completely safe with it. I know other midwives use it also in the 1st trimester because it has a bit of beneficial effect even to avoid miscarriage. That's what some midwives say, and this is the experience. We don't have studies to prove that, so I'm just saying this is what it's used to be used for, or to help with morning sickness even. So it can be used in the 1st trimester. You have to make your choices. You have to see. It's definitely not an herb that we have to make big warnings about, or kind of stay away from completely, because that's what happens. We lose our tools that we have to make a pregnancy go healthy, be healthy, and go in the right direction. And so it is also dangerous to not take your herbs in pregnancy. Just consider that. If you find any scaring information on the internet, talk to your midwife, talk to your herbalist, talk to somebody who really knows. If you plan to take an herb in a higher dose for a longer period of time, it is always worth investigating and talking to a professional to find out if it's really a good choice for you if you're pregnant or breastfeeding. But in many cases, the benefits totally outweigh the risks. Of course, we will never know how any herb affects every person on this planet. Everybody reacts a bit differently to the herbs, but we have general guidelines. If those herbs were culturally used, you can go to India, you find women taking ashwagandha and shatavari and gotu-kola in pregnancy. And here, if you go to the internet, it's like, no, we don't have enough studies, on pregnant and breastfeeding women. I mean, what studies do you need, if like millions of women are using this safely since thousands of years in India. In Ayurveda, it's very common herbs that are usually given to breastfeeding moms and pregnant moms. So what more studies do we need? We would have already noticed that these herbs are not good in pregnancy if they were really, posing any risk to the pregnancy. So we unfortunately have to make our own decisions, be in our own comfort zone. It's very hard to recommend herbs these days. So honestly, back to what I said in the beginning, it's very tricky, because if I recommend an herb to a woman during pregnancy, she will find this information on the internet. She will have the doubt and maybe not feel safe, or, getting the side effect because she read about it or something. I mean, it's all possible. So it's really tricky. But I want to also just advocate for this, we cannot just give up our tools. We need the herbs to stay healthy. It's, for me, definitely a big part of having a healthy pregnancy and avoiding trouble in pregnancy. So there's also a risk of not taking the herbs. Just keep that in mind. Okay, check out also my new podcast. I talk a bit more about the issue of safety of herbs in pregnancy. The podcast, you find it on all the platforms, all the apps you might use for listening to our podcast. It's called Down to Earth Herbalism with Tamara. And leave me a comment if you like this episode. Also a little shout out here to my herbal sisters. You know who you are. Thanks for your support. Thank you for watching this. So I hope I get into the rhythm here again, posting some videos on YouTube, because it's really fun, and I think it's good to share this information. So thank you, and see you next time. Ciao.